tell the story in the book is a place that you and I both know as Pacific Northwest guys. There's a place called Lincoln City in Oregon. That's near just north of Newport. And I used to go there because my aunt was the receptionist at a hotel, and she lived in a trailer near the beach, and it was like this bliss. I used to go there, and I remember the first time I was trying to fish off the rocks in Lincoln City, Oregon. I was catching nothing. This old guy lived in a shack is watching me, and he comes up and says, "Kid, I've been watching you." You know, today he'd be arrested, but and he said, "You're not catching anything, right?" I said, "No." He says, "Because you're doing it wrong. You can't catch any fish unless it's a falling tide. That's when the tide is going out very quickly, rushing out between the rocks." And I'm like, "Well, all the fish are gone, right?" He says, "No, you'll see. It's stirring up the plankton. The fish go crazy. It's happening in 45 minutes." He has his fishing pole. We throw our lines in, and we're pulling them out by the tens. It's unbelievable. And afterward, he's feeling sort of philosophical. He lights up a cigarette on the rocks. I'm 11 or something. And he says, "Hey, kid, during a falling tide, you can only make one mistake." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Not having your line in the water." And I have learned this, that the time between the tides of your life, the falling tide of your life, looks like you're losing everything. Get your line in the water, because that's the most fertile period of your life.
So what does it mean to have your line in the water?
You must try new things. You must be fully alive. You must try everything you possibly can.
I need you to define fully alive.
To wake up each day and to live that day full of possibility. Not to nurse your wounds, not to waste your time, not to try to do things that you used to do. To be fully alive is to be alive to the new set of experiences that's coming across the transom. That's super important, because during this time of liminality, by the way, there's a lot of research on this. This is not just an anecdote about this kid fishing in Oregon. There's a lot of research that shows that this time between periods in your life, there's a guy named Bruce Feiler who writes a book about transitions. And he said during these life quakes, if your spouse just left you, that's a fertile period for you to learn new things. If you've lost somebody to death, if you're going through chemotherapy, for example, and you're very afraid.
You've just been through a pandemic.
For example, during the pandemic, many people find that despite the fact that they hated it and were insecure and it was horrible, that their lives transformed for the good. That, in terms of what we're talking about here, the two curves, fluid and crystallized intelligence, that period between the two where you're declining in one and the other's increasing, but you don't know how to get on it or even what it means, that's your most fertile period. That's when things can be absolutely magic. They're not going to be fun. You might not be happy, but that's when magic can happen.